Well, all right, welcome back for another beer tasting. I'm Kevin with CrafTeeBeer, and by beer tasting I mean it's like story time, but instead of a book, it's a beer. And today's story is a Berliner Weisse. So today's Berliner Weisse is from Ballast Point Brewing. They're in San Diego, California, and this is a 7% ABV blackberry sour ale. And I can hear the groaning. Somebody saying, Ballast Point Brewing, they're not a craft beer brewery. That's technically true. They were started in 1995 by Jack White. He started as a home brewer, and then he opened a small home brewing supply store, Homebrew Mart. Got into brewing, took over the space next to the brewing supply shop, and loaded, started small time loading kegs into his car or minivan and drove around selling them to local restaurants. And fast forward to 2015, and the Constellation Group bought Ballast Point Brewing for, I think, $1 billion.
Selling out.
So technically they're not a craft beer brewery because they might exceed ownership, and they might exceed the Brewers Association has limitations on how many barrels you can produce and still be called a craft beer brewery. If you're not a craft beer nerd and you don't know, there's a whole, I wouldn't say controversy, but there's discussion around that, and people are kind of caught up in whether breweries still have their craft beer designation or not. I hear people talking about a new term that's going to be independent brewers versus craft brewers. Not sure what all that means. If you understand all that or care about that, leave us some comments and give us your thoughts on that. But I saw a beer I want to try. It's from Ballast Point. They make good beer, so it's here and we're going to drink it. So it's the Sour Wench Berliner Weisse. A Berliner Weisse is a sour beer like a Belgian Lambic or a German Gose. Soured. This is a kettle soured beer, so it's soured in the kettle, or when they're brewing the beer they add lactobacillus, which is a lactic acid bacteria. The brewer can then monitor the pH. The higher the pH, I guess, the more sour the beer. When they get to the pH they care about or want, they can reboil the wort, which is unfermented beer. That kills off the acid, and that's the level of sourness they get. A Berliner Weisse is usually fruit infused. I think the original style, or sometimes when the style's served, that you actually get it's infused with some kind of fruit juice, I guess. So it's normally a low ABV, but this is 7%. So this not true to the part of the style that says it should be low ABV. So the Sour Wench, the description on their website: barrels for over 6 months, our Sour Wench emerges with aromas of freshly sliced white peach, citrus, woody oak tannins, and rich vanilla. Within every sip, you'll taste hints of crushed berries, ripe apricots, with a deliciously buttery smoothness from the Chardonnay barrels, while finishing dry from the Sauvignon Blanc on the back. Easy drinking for a barrel-aged beer. It's tart, refreshing, and delightfully smooth. So I guess this was a second take on their Sour Wench. Blackberry, white peach, citrus, and vanilla. So the label has a woman skeleton who's obviously the Sour Wench. She's delivering beer. The label also says 2018 white wine barrel aged. So a Berliner Weisse sour beer with blackberry and, I guess, barrel aged. All right, let's get the Sour Wench out of her bottle and into our glass. Good carbonation. I could hear the carbonation rushing up the glass while I poured it. I can smell a little bit of that sour berry already, but it's got a very sweet berry, almost wine aroma to it. Very pleasant. So some sour beers can have that really funky, natural, like a farmhouse ale or something that can have a nose that's not that pleasant. This is a really pleasant nose. All right, let's try it. Sour Wench from Ballast Point Brewing. Cheers. sour berry immediately. The sour came in both sides of the tongue. Wherever those sour receptors are, sour came through the back end. The sour subtly subsides, and then there's this berry flavor that just blossoms, so that it kind of takes the front. It's really good story in that way. Yeah, the souring's just right. It's a sour, but it's not one of those sours that you can completely pucker. Don't get me wrong, I like that. I'm a glutton for punishment when it comes to like black bitter coffee, very hoppy IPAs, or a sour that like makes you close your eyes. This doesn't do that, but it's good. I think it's just right, because that would take away from the berry. The blackberry flavor in this is really, really good. So it's got a berry sweetness with enough sour to meet the standard. Yep, it's got a little bit of like malty sweetness in there too. There's some of that bready cereal sweetness mixed in there. I think a Berliner Weiss is normally 50% Pilsner malt, which is a very simple malt, and then 50% malted wheat, I think.
Beer is all wheat, Cad.
So I haven't had the original sour Wench, but this one definitely has the added dimension, the complexity that it got from being in oak barrels. You get a particular flavor when it's placed in an oak barrel, and then if it's a wine barrel like this, maybe that's part of the sweetness. So the berry sweetness is not just the blackberry, but some of it might be based on the white wine barrels that it was aged in, but that adds a whole nother layer. So this is probably a much more complex beer than the normal sour Wench.
Bring on the wench!
And that sour comes right back when you drink it, and you think it's going to stay, but it doesn't. It cleans up well. And by cleaning up, I just mean that the sour doesn't linger. It doesn't seem to be being accumulative. I really like this. This is good. Ballast Point Sour Wench. Let's go see what people think about this online. On Beer Advocate, the white wine barrel-aged sour Wench has a rating of 4.27 out of 5, so that's an outstanding rating. It's only 25 ratings, but it seems like there's always pretty low rating count on Beer Advocate. Let's go over and see what it has on Untappd. Over on Untappd, the white wine barrel-aged sour Wench has a 3.88 cap rating. A little lower in comparison maybe than Beer Advocate had it. They also say it's a 7.3% ABV here. I thought the website said it was a 7.1% ABV. Either way, 456 ratings. This must be a fairly new beer. It must have just been released. There's not a lot of ratings on either site. All right, let's check in the sour Wench.
He liked it.
Another one checked in on Untappd, the white wine barrel-aged sour Wench. I gave it 4 cap rating. I really like this. I described it as a sour, shows up first, but reasonable. Sweet berry burst follows. That is layered on a subtle white wine and oak flavor. Pretty complex sour. So this is much complex, I'm sure, than the original sour Wench. I'm going to have to try that one and see how they compare. But barrel aging always adds, depth and a lot of flavors that can change as it ages in the barrel. Gave it the flavor profile of sour, blackberry, barrel aged, and smooth. And that brings another beer tasting to an end, or story time.
Great story gets better every time you tell it.
If you have an opinion on whether craft breweries like Ballast Point should be considered craft breweries or not, just hit us up in the comments below and we'll see what we all think. This beer is just well done. If you want to find other social media stuff, that nonsense below. Again, on Untappd, it's CrafTeeBeer. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell for notifications so when the next beer tasting's there, you'll know. And until the next time, I'm Kevin with CrafTeeBeer. Cheers.